This all started a couple of days ago, July 5th, when I got a random call from FedEx around 10 p.m. They asked me for my name and address, which they already knew. I gave it to them, thinking it might be a package that was lost and somehow found its way back to my home. In hindsight, I should have known FedEx doesn't deliver past 8 p.m. here in Canada. I thought nothing of it until I got another phone call saying they couldn't find my unit number and asked me to come out to the roundabout near my place. My dad thought it was weird, so he patrolled the area to find these people. He did around 4 laps. On the first lap, there wasn't anything there. I got curious and joined him for the second lap. Again, nothing. I went back inside, and my dad did a third lap around the house. This time, he found a gray SUV in the corner and confronted them. They told my dad they weren't the delivery people, and my dad left to do another confirmation check. As he was doing this last lap, that same SUV was no longer there. The next day, July 6th, sometime between 6 p.m. and 11 p.m., we heard the doorbell ringing. I went down to check, and there were 2 individuals around the age of 20. They knew my name and were calling out for me. I thought it was weird because I had never seen them before. I didn't feel safe, so I didn't pursue them. They kept coming back repeatedly, so we called the police and talked about what we should do. The cops told me to contact them if this happened again. The next day, July 7th, it was very quiet and nothing weird happened, so we thought the worst was over and just went on with our day. The next day, July 8th, was also quiet, but when the time approached 11 p.m., my security camera spotted an individual wearing a mask taking photos or videos of my house. This was the breaking point. We contacted the police and informed them about this strange behavior. Just when you thought it was over, I was casually in the living room around 3 a.m. that same day, July 8th, when I heard something thumping outside my balcony. I thought it could be anything and didn't mind it until it thumped again. I went to the balcony to see what I was hearing, and then it clicked. I was face to face with the intruder. I started screaming for help, and my family came down to check out the commotion. Thank God I checked the balcony that day. Who knows what else could have happened? Today is July 9th, and I haven't gotten a wink of sleep thinking about the terror I faced. Am I one of the targets of a home invasion? How did they get my name? What do they want from me? I am a 27-year-old female. At the time this occurred, I was a senior in high school, angsty and steadily into partying. For this story, I'm going to hide her identity. Let's call her Kay. Kay almost cost me my life, and I never want to see her again. A little backstory on Kay. She had grown up privileged, given anything she ever wanted. Her parents adopted her 5 cousins, and this is when she started to rebel. Her parents, who were well off, started to pay less attention to her, so Kay had all the freedom in the world. At the time this incident occurred, Kay was 18, and I had just turned 18. We were headed to a kickback at these guys' house, and nothing more than a little bit of weed was expected. I had my share of smoking weed and popping pills here and there. I had just tried ecstasy the summer prior. However, I was planning on staying sober. She picked me up and we stopped to buy cigs at a gas station. I bought a fountain drink, one with the straw and everything. This is crucial for later in the story. We arrived at the apartment and everyone was smoking, including Kay, but I declined. She would always say shit about how she never wanted to be high alone and complained about how I never got as high as her. So I obliged, and I cleared the bong off her hit, not even taking a full hit. She asked for a drink of my soda, and I handed it to her. She had it for a good minute. I had my head turned, talking to someone at the kickback. When I looked back at Kay, she was messing with my straw. I didn't think much of it, and she handed it back to me. Within about 30 minutes or so, I started to feel intensely high to the point that I needed to escape from the group. I went out front to smoke a cigarette, only to find that I couldn't stand up, so I laid on the front porch. Then all of these dark thoughts flashed through my mind. I felt so sick, like my stomach was being torn open. I couldn't stand up. I had to crawl to the bushes to throw up. I thought to myself, all of this off clearing a bong? So I laid back on the porch. The apartment was located on a busy street in the city I live in. I also thought about running into traffic because I felt like I was dying. So I gave myself 2 options. I could run into traffic, have a car hit me and end this horrible pain I was in, or I could get some help, maybe flag someone down. My mind wasn't in the right state. I knew nobody at the kickback would take me seriously. I knew something was terribly wrong. I thought about calling my mom. I must have dialed her number and hung up like 5 different times. Finally, I called and told her what had happened and that I didn't know why I was so high. Nobody else was feeling the way I felt. What seemed like an eternity later, Kay came outside looking for me. As I was puking my guts out into the bushes, she asked me if I wanted to go get some food. I asked her if she was fucking serious. She laughed as I puked. What I didn't know was that my mother had called my older brother to pick me up, since he lived close to where I was. He showed up with a machete and ran inside, threatening people. He didn't know who gave me what. It wasn't until I got home that my brother took one look at my eyes and noticed how dilated my pupils were. So they rushed me to the ER. After more puking, of course. My memory there is a bit fuzzy. I just remember asking my sister-in-law if I was going to die and telling her that I was scared. They ended up sedating me due to the fact that I was yelling and threatening the nurses, which was totally out of character for me. They did a tox screen drug test and found MDMA, the drug found in ecstasy, along with other drugs in my system. I'm assuming the other drugs were the ones used to make up the ecstasy. Now this is all frightening and everything. However, what I found out a few days later shocked me to my core. Kay had been to a house party the next night. Somebody there said she was passing out free ecstasy to 4 different people. Of those 4 people, 3 had grand mal seizures and had to be taken to the ER by ambulance. I'm assuming that whatever ecstasy she used was a bad batch. Remember when she asked to have a drink of my soda? I assume this is when she dropped the pill inside and it dissolved. She probably crushed it beforehand or something. I have no clue, but at this time in my life I hadn't done drugs for quite a while. Especially not ecstasy. Kay also went on to tell people that I was the one who slipped her the drug and that she had to go to the hospital. She is a pathological liar and has had to go to therapy for a long time for mental disorders. All of this happened because she wanted me to be high like her. I could have committed suicide because I wasn't in the right frame of mind. It still affects me to this day. It sounds cliche, but I have a hard time trusting people with this experience, among other things. I also don't like sharing drinks with friends. I get scared when I go out to a bar or club fearing the worst. I mean, if my own friend had done this to me, what's stopping a stranger? So I always guard my drink, no matter what. This is actually my stepmom's her best friend story. I have my own, but I'm so hesitant to drag some of them up that I'm hoping telling someone else's will open me to it a little more. My stepmom didn't like us much, but she told my sister, 3 years older, and me this experience growing up to scare us out of being stupid. It was my family's stranger danger story. My stepmom, we're going to call her Macy, grew up as a kind of privileged teen in the 70s, and her mom had moved their family over here, the States, from England when she was about 9. She went to a pretty nice high school in a really nice town. There, she made friends with a girl, Lily, who didn't exactly run with Macy's type of crowd. Popular, stereotypical, etc. They really hit it off, and Lily would take Macy out to do her type of stuff, hiking, fishing, sailing. There's even a hilarious set of pictures of them camping. My stepmom has raccoon eyes and looks like she hates everything. Anyways, because of Lily's influence, the 2 of them would do stuff like that a good amount. One Sunday, they decided to go hike in some hills about an hour away. Macy put on what I'm sure were her extremely expensive hiking shoes, and the 2 of them drove off to the hiking trails. Lily parked in this big clearing with makeshift parking spots, like a piece of wood marking the head of a space, but there were no other cars there. This was only important in hindsight. They started hiking up the hill, off the path because Lily fancied herself as something of a badass. The hike was nothing extraordinary. If you asked my stepmom, she would just lament for 15 minutes about how sticky and buggy it was. Anyways, they reached the top of the hill and my stepmom was done. The polished, pampered side of her was coming out and she groaned until Lily, begrudgingly, said, "Okay." They would rest and then walk down again, slower. They had been heading down the hill for maybe 10 minutes when Macy started bitching again. Lily conceded to walking down the side of the road instead of the rough hiking trail, so there they are. Probably looking like a couple of tools geared up for hiking and walking down a crappy road, and after not even 5 minutes, a truck pulled up next to them. It was red and rusty and just generally looked like a clunker. The guy driving rolled down the window and the girls looked in through the passenger side window. He had a big beard, a baseball cap pulled down, and long brown hair. He greeted them and even smiled through his beard, asking if they needed a ride. Macy described him as charming and even cute. Lily still says the moment he greeted them, her hackles went up. Despite her better judgment, my stepmom convinced her to get in the truck. It must only be a 10-minute drive down to the car tops. The two girls opened the passenger door to this rusty old thing, and the guy directed them behind the seat to get into the back. They settled in, and the truck started rumbling forward. Lily always says that was the point it hit her what a mistake they had just made. The back seat was clean enough, but there was a rope on the floor behind the driver's seat and 4 boxes of saran wrap half hanging out from under the passenger seat. It seemed creepy and weird, but Lily didn't want to freak my stepmom out, so she just kept her mouth shut. After 10 minutes, the woods didn't look any clearer, and they hadn't seen another car the whole time. Lily asked how long he thought it would be. He said he was taking a different route down the hill and had to stop somewhere to get something first. That was it. The girls were 16, 17, and Lily didn't want to press the issue. She was scared. She can remember his hair because she was sitting behind him. He looked like a woodsy guy, but his hair was super tangled and dirty. She noticed crusted mud on his collar and tried to find something identifiable about him, but just got more scared the more she picked up on little details. He was youngish, strong-looking, and had a foot on both of them. So they didn't ask any more questions and he didn't offer any information, and they drove on. Several minutes after that, they reached a tiny shack log cabin-looking place right there in a clearing of trees. There was an old stump where someone had been chopping wood and a huge axe stuck into the log. Lily was definitely on red alert now. The guy turned off the truck and slipped out of it saying, "I'll be right back, don't get out." And he disappeared into the house. Lily tried to talk to my stepmom about how incredibly uncomfortable she was, but Macy mostly just dismissed it. Lily started begging, increasingly freaked out, and finally put her foot down, demanding Macy exit the truck with her. So they got out and walked around the front of the vehicle. The house was about 50 yards in front of them. Why this guy would have left 2 young girls in the truck alone while going into the house is beyond me, and they wandered around, looking at it hesitantly. If this guy really was decent and just trying to give them a ride, it would be super rude to just run off, right? My stepmom had this strict upbringing when it came to manners and public persona, and she saw it as an issue of that nature. So she actually started to head back to the truck, opening the front door to climb in behind the driver's seat. Lily was pissed off and followed her to yell some more. On the driver's side floor, half hidden under the seat, there was a big hatchet. It had dried red-brown stains covering the blade and stuck to the floor under it. Lily understandably lost her shit, and seeing it, my stepmom started getting hysterical. They decided that leaving was by far their best option at this point, and just booked it off the side of the property into the trees. They bumbled around in the trees for a little while until Lily was fairly confident they were on their way back down the hill. My stepmom cried all the way down. Lily felt bad about it, but was also completely freaked out that he would hear it and kept trying to calm her down. When they finally got back down to the bottom and saw the old wooden fence that surrounded the original parking area, they were relieved. But as they got closer, they saw it. The truck. It was parked on the other side of the gravelly makeshift lot, just sitting there, facing the other way innocently. They couldn't see if anyone was in it. And of course, Macy wanted to run for the car, but Lily was super hesitant. She managed to calm my stepmom down, saying she wanted to wait before running out into the open to see what was out there. Remember, this is the 70s. No cell phones. There was no ranger station or anyone around. The parking lot was big and empty and open, and who knows what would have happened if they decided to stroll across it. Thankfully, Lily convinced my stepmom to chill, and the two of them hunkered down against a big tree, hidden by bushes and other trees, and waited it out for what seemed to be a couple of hours. When dark started to fall, all the animals started coming out and making noises, and my stepmom, predictably, started getting antsy about this and bothering Lily, who was tired and moments away from giving in. She was just planning their dash to the car when they heard a clunk. Across the twilight-lit lot, they watched as one of the back doors of their car swung open, and the bearded guy slid his way out of the back seat. He got out, shut the door, looked around at the surrounding woods for several moments, and then walked back to his truck. The truck lumbered past their car and out of sight. Several minutes after watching him drive away, they sprinted to their car as fast as they could, jumped in and peeled out before they had even shut the doors. Since almost a year now, the end of August 2019 to be exact, I have moved to an apartment in a different city because my mother, who I lived with in my hometown, passed away from cancer. I moved here with my long-term boyfriend and one other roommate, who has been a good friend of both of us since before we had even started dating. We all absolutely love it here. The location is great. It's a 15-minute bike ride from my university, and it's located at a square with a grocery store, drugstore, lunchrooms, etc. So we pretty much have everything we could possibly need to survive within walking distance. However, after just a month or two of living here, someone started ringing my doorbell at exactly 11:05 p.m., semi-regularly. Sometimes every day, sometimes every other day, sometimes there's a week in between, and sometimes there are a couple of weeks in between. But it is always at around 11:05 p.m., and every single time I get no answer when I ask through the intercom who it is. Except for one time, but I will get to that in a bit. At first, I thought it was friends of one of the neighbors who accidentally rang the wrong doorbell. But after around the fourth time, I grew suspicious. And after more than those 4 times, I started noticing that it always happens at either exactly 11:05 p.m. or a few minutes earlier or later. My boyfriend and roommate both work at bars, so they work until very late and would usually only get home around 2 a.m. So each time it happened, I was always alone at home, and it started to really freak me out after a while. When I first told them about it, they kind of shrugged it off and said that it was probably a wrong dial like I thought at first. But when I told them that it had happened so many times and sometimes even daily, they didn't really believe me and thought I was just a little paranoid and spooked. However, one night when the doorbell rang again and I answered the intercom asking who it was, I heard very heavy breathing. I was thoroughly spooked at that moment. I was again home alone and kept asking who they were and what they wanted. I couldn't make out from the breathing if it was a man or a woman, but I heard strange mumbling, whispering, and then it was dead silent, and they appeared to have left. I put my apartment door on a double lock after that. I was so scared and spooked. Thankfully, my roommate got home a little earlier that night, around 30 minutes after the doorbell rang, and he could tell how upset I was. Now, with the corona crisis, my roommate and boyfriend aren't able to work anymore, and they have now also witnessed the frequent door ringing at 11:05 p.m., so they do believe me and agree that it is very odd and creepy. We have a balcony that looks down at where our apartment building's main front door is, but because there's also a shop right underneath us that always has those curtain roof things out, the view of the door is partially obscured. Every time our doorbell rang, my boyfriend, my roommate, and I would go to the balcony to see if we could spot anyone, but we never could. I have also asked my neighbors in the apartment building if their doorbell also gets rung so often, but the ones I asked all said that it has never happened to them. So 2 weeks ago, my roommate decided to do some investigating and went outside our apartment building at 11 p.m., standing across the street and pretending to have a smoke while keeping an eye on the door. He said he did see a man who looked kind of suspicious wandering around our apartment building, who slowed down his pace significantly as soon as he approached our door. But when he spotted my roommate looking at him, he quickly walked away. We aren't 100% sure if that's the door ringer, but that was very, very suspicious. Our doorbell hasn't been rung at night since that day, and I am hoping that maybe it will stop now. But there is a possibility that it will continue again in a few weeks.